How does Joe Rogan get people to listen to him for over 4 hours every week? I'm Dr. Dan, I'm a coach, and I'm a neurostrategist. I get passionate about the brain to help you bring reproducible results when it comes to communicating. And in this video, we're gonna break down why Joe Rogan can literally get people to watch 4 hours of his podcast week after week after week. When you think about it, it's pretty fascinating. And I'm gonna go through 3 brain-based reasons. How does one human capture millions of people's brains for hours at a time, and they keep coming back? There's a science to it, and when you actually adopt some of the strategies that Joe uses, you will get better results in your own life. So everybody knows Joe Rogan. He's a comedian. He hosted the Fear Factor back in the day. He calls UFC fights and interviews fighters in the octagon afterwards, but he's probably becoming most well known for being the host of his own podcast show, The Joe Rogan Experience. And it's fascinating to watch this thing continue to take off because it's such a long show. What's most compelling to you and me should be, how does he get people to pay attention that long? There's an art and there's a science to what he's doing, and I'm telling you, when you do some of this stuff, it's gonna help you too. I'll first say this, I don't agree with everything that Joe Rogan says. In fact, my worldview is much different than his. I'll also say he's had some sketchy guests on in the past. I remember a few years ago, he brought on this woman who had no credentials, she was not licensed, she didn't have a medical degree, and she starts slamming chiropractic as a pseudoscience. And he was going with it. You could tell that his opinion also shared hers, and he literally cherry-picked her to come validate his opinion. But I'll say this, I still watched it. So kudos to Joe. Because it doesn't matter which side you're on, whether you agree with him or not, most people are paying attention. The numbers of people that watch or listen to the Joe Rogan Experience has surpassed Fox News and CNN and many other popular TV stations with specific episodes that he does. So I say all that to say, Joe is doing something right, and it's very compelling when you look at exactly what he's doing. So the first thing that Joe does so well is that he's curious. Joe is genuinely curious about seeking truth, about finding answers, not just to put somebody on the spot, but to truly pull out of them their unique thoughts and opinions so that he can genuinely and curiously take the listeners through a journey. And the other thing you notice about Joe right out of the gates is that he's smart. Despite his persona of being this tough guy, he's bald, he's MMA, he's a fighter, he's got these big muscles, he's very smart and intelligent. So his ability to ask the right questions at the right time is very strategic. And the one thing I want you to pay attention with Joe, and even adopt this in your own life, is not to ask a question to seek a specific answer, but rather ask a genuine question to better understand. There's a great scripture that says, seek first to understand than to be understood. And I feel like Joe Rogan does this very well, despite who he's talking to. One of the things I teach my own clients, because I study this so deeply, is questions actually hijack the brain in a positive way. It gently forces the focus of the listener or the receiver of that question to pay attention to this topic that the question is asking. In biology, we call that the instinctive elaboration reflex. When you ask somebody a question, the brain literally will have a reflex where it increases serotonin, a specific hormone that looks for the answer. And it's that gentle nudge, that gentle focus to take your listener's attention to that topic. And the thing you'll see with Joe is he's got that genuine curiosity. It actually can take a listener and make them feel like he actually cares, because he cares. Not that he doesn't confront, challenge, debate, and sometimes even argue. He has that caring attitude where we'll bring it back, looking for answers, looking for truth, and he does that through a beautiful question process that allows his audience to come on that journey with him. It's that concept, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you actually care. An expert marketer, Frank Kern, says, demonstrate you care by actually caring. And I believe that Joe, even though he has his faults and his enemies, he actually cares for the people he's talking to. And he genuinely wants to know the answers that he's asking, not only for him, not only for the interviewee, but for his audience. So you can think about how you've experienced this in your own life and actually asking questions genuinely because you want to know versus just because you feel like you had to ask. My wife and I went on a couple date nights, this was months ago, and we went on 2 double dates in 1 week. And they were completely opposite experiences. In one of the dates, the couple talked all about themselves, particularly the gentleman. He talked all about himself, and he would randomly throw in a question to me or my wife, but you knew it was just forcing it. He really didn't want to know the answer. He just felt like he should ask a question because he kept talking and talking and talking. And we compare that to the other date, and they were intrigued to know, where are we at? What are we doing? What do we think about a certain topic or issue? And when we came away from those, it was a complete different emotion. What we felt about this couple that asked genuine questions is this closeness, this connection, this relationship that got stronger. So the same thing happens to you in your personal and your professional lives. The questions you're asking need to be genuine and they need to be curious. And the more you do that, the more you'll impact the emotions of your listeners. There's a quote that I love by David Augsburger regarding listening. He says, "Feeling heard is so close to feeling loved that for most people, they can't tell the difference." And so when you actually listen to people, and part of listening is actually listening with your eyes, because 55% of your communication is from your body language. Therefore, the majority of your listening actually comes from eye contact when you're with somebody one-on-one. Again, going back to this, when you watch Joe Rogan in his interviews, he's a great listener. He's got great eye contact and he's got good body language. Check out what another expert communicator, Jordan Peterson, had to say about Joe Rogan.
That's the thing. Well, look at what happened to you. You have 1.5 billion downloads a year. It's like you're definitely riding a giant wave. Like, would have you predicted this 15 years ago?
No.
So you're in the right place in the right time, and you're a very interesting interviewer because, well, especially for long form, because you're very, very curious, but also very, very tough. Like, it's interesting watching you because if you don't understand something, you will go after the person. And you're not doing it in a vindictive way, but you're quite a formidable interviewer. And I've been trying to figure out why you're so successful. And like, you're a lot smarter than anyone might think, which is quite interesting. So you're a weird combination because, your persona doesn't shout intellectual, but you're damn smart and you're tough as a bloody boot. And you ask really provocative questions, and not because you're provocative. And so your personality and this long form seem to suit each other really well. You're also really good at pursuing things you don't understand instead of assuming that you know what you're talking about. So you take the listeners on a journey, right? It's an exploratory journey. But fundamentally, what's propelled you to superstardom in some sense is not just your ability, which is non-trivial, but the fact that you're on this giant technological wave and you're one of the first adopters.
So Joe is clearly making waves and catching the eyes of so many experts out there, and there's a reason why Joe is great. Not only that, is he's timing it up with the greatest shift in communication in history. Listen to Jordan explain this.
Look at what's happening. Yeah, well, the spoken word is now as powerful as the written word. That's never happened before in human history.
Isn't that crazy? When you think about it, it makes sense because more people can listen and interpret things than read and interpret things. Even if somebody can't read, they can listen. And now we have avenues and platforms for people to listen. Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, audiobooks. There's so many outlets to be listening or to watch things versus just read. That's why the time is now. You have to get good at being a communicator. Your spoken word is so critical, especially if you have a big message. The second thing Joe does so well is he's knowledgeable. He's got a depth to him. He's willing to ask the tough questions because he's intellectually equipped. He knows a lot about a lot of things, and he's a deep thinker. Not only that, is he prepares for the shows. You could tell he does his research, not only of the people he's interviewing, but everything else that surrounds that topic or the topics that he knows he's going to speak of. Also, he speaks to that which he's most passionate about. Oftentimes you'll see him track back to health, fighting, UFC, politics, hunting, weightlifting, all these things that he knows so well, supplements. And so he's always asking different questions, but he can also lead that. And I think about this. What does he think about? And I'm not sure of this because I haven't asked Joe on this. I'm guessing that Joe often thinks about what they're thinking about to better direct the conversation. Research shows that if you're trying to connect with somebody or even sell something to someone, that the best thing you can do is not think about their emotions, think about their thoughts. Think about what they're thinking about rather than what they're feeling. And we want to affect their emotion and their feeling if we're trying to sell or persuade, but the key is that you think about what they're thinking about. So my guess is, based on how I see him affect the brain, is that he's thinking about what they're thinking about. And the third thing Joe does so well is he's got a high level of emotional intelligence. EQ is the abbreviation compared to IQ, intellectual quotient versus emotional quotient. And your EQ is a greater predictor of your success than your IQ. It's not about how smart you are, it's about how emotional intelligent. Can you detect the emotions of somebody else as well as your own and have a mutual exchange based on emotion? If you can do that well, it will guarantee your success much more than being smarter. And if you can nail this, I'm gonna tell you right now, you will be a more effective leader. Joe's not afraid to ask people how they feel about things or continue to go layers deep so that they reveal emotions. Not that he's trying to pull out their emotions, he's good at finding the source of where they're coming from versus just stay on the surface. So I'm gonna tell you right now, unless we have some sort of unforeseen circumstances that occur, Joe's popularity is going to continue to increase. And you can adopt the same strategies. In this case, when you're interviewing people or just when you're interacting with anyone, be curious, be knowledgeable, and display a high level of emotional intelligence. There you have it. For more brain-based communication strategies and to assess more people that are doing it great, hit the subscribe button or leave me a comment. Always here to answer questions. Dr. Dan, I'm out.